Hi guys, welcome back to another video. In this video I'm actually going to show you what it is that I use for soldering and a bit of how I do it. So I'm going to show you this. Now the reason this has come about is quite a few people were asking how I do my soldering and what it is that I use. So my soldering iron is actually literally snapped in half. It was quite a cheapy job. So what I've done is I've bought a kit like you can, and what I'll do is I'll put a link in the description to this exact kit, and I thought it'd be interesting to show you. This isn't a review as such, this is just me going to show you how to get your soldering iron sort of set up. Now in this kit, I think this was 30 quid or something, give or take a couple of pennies here and there. We've got our soldering iron, and this one's a digital one, which is quite nice, and it comes with all these other bits. Now the reason I bought this kit mainly is it has a stand for the soldering iron. There's some spare nibs there that you put in the soldering iron. We'll have a look at that in a minute. But yeah, so I sold on the soldering iron itself being digital, but then also this. There's a bit of weight to this stand, which is handy. You want it to be a bit weighty. And I'm not going to use this, but you can. And what this is you put it under the tap. It is basically a sponge, and it will sit in there damp, not sopping wet, just damp. And then this will sit in there like that. So now we'll have something to put our soldering iron on. The tips here, there's some spaces on the stand there that you could put them in. And what's also quite neat, I do use one of these. I've got one myself, so I might not use this one. I basically bought the kit for the soldering iron and the stand, because my stand's a bit janky. There you go. And that sits in the stand like that. And now this is quite handy, and I'll show you this in a minute. I tend to use this more than anything, to be honest. It's probably a good idea just to stretch it out a bit like this, and then actually put it back in there. So it kind of wants to stay in there. All that is, basically, is when you've got solder on a hot soldering iron, you can poke the soldering iron into there, and the solder tends to stay on this brass. It's a good way of cleaning the actual soldering iron itself. And in fact, before we get started on soldering iron, I'll just show you some of the other bits that are in the kit, because I thought this was a bit funny. These cheapy tweezers are actually the ones that I show you in all my videos. So actually, if you bought the kit, you could also have yourself a nice, well, cheap set of tweezers as well. Now mine, I'll probably replace mine with these. It's just ironic that there's a set in here. Solder as well. Now, yeah, so this is lead-free solder. Our OHS compliance came in, I think it was year 2000, so then you couldn't buy solder with lead, and a lot of circuit boards and whatnot came with lead-free solder. And what happens roughly in that year of cars, let's take real cars for example, the ECUs had problems with the solder because they were lead-free solder joints. So anyway, that's our solder. This is just with the kit, so this is basically anything you can buy pretty much on Amazon or somewhere like this. The diameter of this is 1mm. You can use thinner stuff, you can use thicker stuff, but I'm going to show you this kit and show you that you don't need amazing things to, you know, start soldering. This is the solder sucker, and I'll show you that as well. I'll show you it in action in a minute. I wanted to show you this from new, so I've got this and I need to clean the tip on the soldering iron and whatnot, so I'll show you what I do. The idea behind this, and I'll show you it in action later, is you push this plunger down, you put this end near your wet solder when you've got the soldering iron on it, and then you go like that, you press this button, and the idea, there's like a piston in here, it sucks all the air up and hopefully the molten solder. So this is handy, can be handy. But the chap in the comments said, because when you want to desolder stuff, it's quite difficult with the solder sucker, because some of the stuff you're dealing with is really quite small. And he mentioned to me to get some of this, and I've seen it before, and I don't know why I didn't think about it, but that was a good shout. So the idea behind this stuff is, and I can also link this in the description as well, it's 2mm wide and it's 3 meters long. It's almost like the braiding that you get on a Scalextric car. It's just the best way I could put it. And it just acts like a wick for when you want to suck it'll suck the solder up into it. So there, you can see. In fact, you could probably use this for Scalextrics, looking at it. It looks the same, except it's like copper. So we'll come to that in a minute as well. First things first though, is we need to get this soldering iron plugged in and heated up. So far it's quite a nice kit to start off with. You can buy really expensive things, but I don't really think that they're needed. The last soldering iron I had lasted me many years, and to be honest with you, the reason it broke is probably because I had the wrong holder for it. So let's take that out. There. Okay. So make sure you take this plastic off. I know that probably sounds like a lot of common sense for you, a lot of you, but sometimes things get missed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go for the finest tip that comes with this kit. And we're looking at this one here, I would say. It's pretty small. And as long as you remember to clean the tip when you're using it, then they just slide off like that. Put this one on. Bear in mind, this is brand spanking new, so I'm hoping it works. Pretty tight, not super duper tight. And let's plug it in, shall we? Okay, so we've got our extra tips. I will probably put them somewhere else, but they can just sort of live in there for a minute. Now this is new to me, so this is digital, so what that means is I can change the temperature with these buttons. So on my last soldering iron I had a dial, and that was a bit annoying because I'd set it to 450 degrees Celsius, and then you'd be soldering, and what you find is this part of your hand actually turns it down over time, or it was for me. So in this case I'm hoping that isn't going to be an issue, and wow, look at that go. I'm hoping having a dial won't be an issue on this. This is live as well, by the way. Can't be that hot already, surely. No, so it is that hot already, but probably about here inside, and then the heat's got to propagate to the end of the tip. I mean, that's heating up pretty quick. Yeah, so what you can do is, I prefer using this, and there's going to be some professional soldering iron chaps out there, I'm sure. I don't tend to use this bit. You can do, but I don't. Now what I'm doing here is it's set to 350, okay, and I'm just going to keep dabbing the tip until we see some of the solder sort of melt and it's getting there. You want to be in a well ventilated area. That has just happened that quick. So our solder, I'm going to zoom in here. Basically, you're just putting the solder on the tip. I'd say it's probably got to be a little bit hotter than it is at the minute. See how it just melts there like that? Okay, so that's an example there. We've got molten solder on the tip, and then you just clean it back off. I'll do this a couple more times, and the reason for that is the tip will have all sorts of stuff on it because it's brand new. And I want the very end of the tip to take the solder. So it's almost like prepping the soldering iron for soldering, like running it in. So I've got blob on the end of it there, and I'm dangling it right on the end. And then I'm going to clean it. I'm going to try that again. Now what I'm going to do, we're on 350 degrees Celsius here, I'm going to turn that up. And I'm going to go for 400. Quite hot. So we let that get up to speed. Clink. So that's the temperature it's going to. Now I suspect this is going to be a lot better. And what I'm going to do, I'll just put it in here for a minute whilst it's on. I'm going to grab something we can solder, and I'm just going to show you some basics. Okay, so we're back, and I've got some things. The soldering iron is hot there. We've got diode. We've got some LED strip here. I've kept zoomed in on the camera because this stuff's pretty small. Then hopefully you can see it a bit better. Let's see if it'll focus better. That's better. We're going to try desoldering one of these LEDs. These are small, but they're not terribly small. Normally, if I had something like this and I wanted to use the LED, I would probably just cut this ribbon off around it and then heat up the area and pull off the LED. Yeah, there we go. Got it. Cool. Let's just stick that down to our little bench. You can get these things called helping hands. Now I've got a few of these. I've got one which has got like crocodile clip ends with these weird UJ joints, and that just clamps to a desk. You can get loads of different things that can help hold things down. What I'm going to do though, we're at 400 degrees Celsius on the soldering iron. Just going to test that the solder takes to the soldering iron. Kinda does. It's not as good as I'd like it though just yet. Now what I'm doing is if I want to remove this item, generally I'll put solder on it. Now the reason I'm showing you this is sometimes you might want to remove something. I'm just going to put the temperature up even higher. I'm going to put it to where my other soldering iron used to be at 450. Okay, and that would get up to temp slowly but surely. Now I'm going to show you what the solder sucker does. So, you know, I've pre-plunged it, if you like, and you want it close to the item that you want the solder gone on. and then when it goes molten like this, you suck it up with the solder sucker. You see that? It's sucked it up, but it's not done an amazing job because we're dealing with some very small stuff here. And what you do is you kind of get the flake out the end of the plunger. So I'm going to do the same on the other side. And there we go. So that's, that's what the solder sucker's doing. Now, what I'm going to do though, is I'm going to try this stuff. And it is called solder wick. And we'll see what we get. So I'm putting it on top of the solder. With the hope that it basically draws up the solder into it, and you can see there it has, and it pulls it away from the soldering joint, which allows you to kind of remove the chip if you like. And would you look at that, look, it's free. Beautiful. So that is a typical, what do you call it, de-soldering. And that solder wick is beautiful. It's done a really good job there. It's worked a lot better than I thought it would. So that's the back of it there. So that'd be a very, very good way of removing chips. Now, if you can find yourself some leaded solder, you're probably going to be better off. This stuff has got, I think it's got flux in it. Now, what I'm referring to here, right, is when you solder something, like if we take this diode for example, I'm just going to chuck a bit of solder on it. I'm going to try and get, I don't know if you see this, but what I do is I'll put the solder next to it and I try and get the solder onto it at the same time. There we go. Just like that. I know it's not super duper pretty, but in a way this would be classified as pre-tinning, and this could relate to a wire or something. So if I was to solder this diode to something, let's take this for example. I'll try and show you a bit clearer. And this ribbon here, see how that you can see the copper pads? Well, I wouldn't try and just solder the diode to that copper there. What I would do is I'd pre-tin the diode like we just have, and then what I'd come along and do is pre-tin this copper pad. Just like that, you see? I'm going to do the other one there just so I can show you again. And rule of thumb is, if the solder is shiny and it remains shiny, you've done a good job. If it goes if it mats off, you've done a pretty lousy job. But you can just add more solder there. Well, I say lousy job, it's just, the join isn't as good as it could be. So because I've tinned the diode and I tinned the ribbon, all you're doing then really is you're just putting some heat into the thing. Just rub the wire, get the heat into it, and boom. Give it a second and it's on. Just like that. Then we go back to the other one. And as you see, the solder will go, it'll mat off because it's burning the flux out of the solder. I could do this all day long pretty much. You just got to be careful you don't get too much heat into the object that you're trying to solder and you ruin it. Is this the neatest soldering job in the world? Nope. Does it work? Yep. So there you go. I'm hoping this helps you out a little bit. I'm not doing anything special. This is the lead-free solder and it works okay. I can definitely see a difference between, let's say, the other stuff I've been using, which has got lead in it, versus this. However, this is more than usable. I have got my soldering iron set to 450 degrees Celsius there. Don't forget to clean the tip of your soldering iron. And again, sorry. just to squash all that stuff out there. Literally just cleaning the tip off like that. Okay, so you just don't want to leave solder on the tip, otherwise what it'll do is it will basically eat through the tip. But yeah, that's quite strong, isn't it? Oh, changed my mind, I don't want that there, so bring our solder sucker over. Suck that up. Let's do this one as well. There we go. I think I probably just made all that look a little bit too easy, but that's it in a nutshell, guys. The soldering iron, I'm going to continue to have a play with it, but let's turn that off. On. Yeah, going to leave that off, put that back in the holder, and hopefully you found this video helpful. Like I say, this wasn't in the kit, but that solder sucker can't do what this can, so this has just helped out a great deal there. Plus, if you buy the kit, I guess you get these trusty little tweezers, and you can be just like me in the videos, pulling stuff apart. So if you found this video useful, thank you very much, and let me know, I guess. But yeah, just got like years more of fixing trains to do now with our lovely new soldering iron. And like I said before, I'll zoom out here so we can have a bit more of a wider spectrum of talk. The reason I've gone for the soldering iron wasn't for anything other than it being a soldering iron. I just needed a soldering iron. The added advantage is this digital readout, because I don't think I'm going to by accident knock the temperature down, whereas on the dial ones you kind of can by accident. I'm just using the smallest tip that comes with the kit, and this, like I say, this stand's got a bit of weight to it. The other one I had, it didn't hold the soldering iron properly, so I think that contributed to it cracking my soldering iron and breaking it in half. Anyway, enough of me yobbing on. Hopefully you found this useful. If you've got any other questions, give me a shout. But so I've just used everything in the kit, so I'll be fixing. And actually, this is another reason the videos are a bit delayed at the minute because of this issue for me. I've not been able to solder certain things, so now I can, so the videos will start rolling out again. So yeah, enough of me yabbing on. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.